Welcome to The Crumbling. We are a podcast about holy shit, we're living through a coup and how not to, oh my fucking god, or I'm going to piss myself. I'm one of your hosts, Sophia Florence. I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Andrew Hillary. I guess I misunderstood, so I wasn't supposed to piss myself just now. I saw it written down in the script. I'm going to need to, well, I usually have a puppy pad on my couch anyways, even though I don't have a dog. You can never be too safe, but yeah. So anyways, you can just call me Damp Pants Andrew Hillary.
Hell yeah.
And I'm Damp Dude Davin Dubois.
You pissed too?
Hell yeah, we all pissing.
Yeah, alliteration for all the piss action on myself. You're going to have to subscribe to my Fansly. Links in the show notes.
Hell yeah. What's the difference between a chickpea and a garbanzo bean?
I've never had a garbanzo bean on me before.
Yeah, that's an old version of the joke. My version is I've never subscribed to a garbanzo's OnlyFans to see more videos of her beaning. But then that is actually just a joke because you can't show that on OnlyFans. It's Fansly that you can do that kind of. Anyways,
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
There's so many other questions, but we have to get into the script.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to keep talking about climate change this week. And just to recap, we've gone through the story of climate change disinformation going all the way up to the tail end of the 1960s at this point. We've shown the evidence that people knew exactly what the hell was going on, what the potential consequences were, and that they still decided to hide it. And by people, we mean primarily the oil and gas industry, but also plenty of other industries that create vast amounts of pollution. It's a pretty stark picture where even one of the guys who worked on the Manhattan Project, which created the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II, was warning about it. A guy whose creations killed so many people went on to help Reagan with the Star Wars program was like, whoa, climate change might really be bad. And like some of the worst people of the entire 20th century were afraid of what the potentials were and tried to pass laws to stop it from happening. But, money talks. And this topic feels really relevant right now when the current Trump administration, Elon Musk, are out dismantling the parts of the government that happen to collect data on this sort of thing. From the NOAA to NASA to the EPA, all of these agencies have a role in studying or try to combat climate change, or at least kind of mitigating its harms. And the villainous clown car that's now intent to drive this country and the larger world into this stone age is really trying to stop them from doing so. We're lucky that groups like the Environmental Data and Governance Initiative and the Center for Climate Integrity are tracking some of the data. If you want to help them through donations, advocacy, or anything else, we'll have links to them in the show notes on our new beehiiv, which is now where our show notes are going. If you haven't heard of beehiiv, it's an alternative to websites like Substack, which is just like LiveJournal for professionals, and we'd like to make some good use of it. We'll be posting articles, show notes, some previews of the book that I'm writing, and a lot more. Beehiiv is spelled Beehiiv because why spell it right? And if you want to check it out, the website is thecrumbling.beehiiv.com. We have paid subscriptions on there for people who want to donate to us. We recommend just subscribing to the Patreon at patreon.com/thecrumbling if you'd like to support what we're doing. The episode's early, and we'll also have some new tiers unlocked on our Patreon this spring with some merch coming out for people who like the show and want to spread the word or support what we're doing. Yeah, we're getting shirts and shit.
Air horn.
Oh, we definitely need an air horn for that. Yeah, I'm very excited about the merch. We'll have shirts and shit, so you guys should enjoy that. And the work we do is time consuming, and we do it with or without the support. But I'm sure at least a couple of us wouldn't hate leaving our day jobs to focus on this kind of thing.
I actually, I got the hookup on, they closed down the Department of Education. So we actually will be selling books. We'll be selling all the books, like all of them, because they're not going to need them anymore. Why have books for kids?
They're just going to have ChatGPT generate the new algebra books and they'll all be wrong.
Exactly. So you'll be able to go on there. And if you say hey, I like the show, The Crumbling, I want to buy social studies 7th grade textbook. We got you for that. And we'll write our names. We won't sign it because I don't know how to write in cursive, but our names will be in there somewhere.
I'm tired of living in the timeline where Captain America planets are running everything.
Captain America villains, you mean?
Captain Planet villains?
Yeah.
Captain
Planet villains. You all, I'm tired.
I'm tired too.
Captain America planets are ruining everything. That's like Captain America planets is like fucking Marvel astrology. Like, what is happening right now? I have a Hulk rising.
let me rephrase. I'm tired of living in a timeline where Captain Planet villains are running everything. And if I had to pick an evil timeline, I want the Doctor Doom one because like that motherfucker was good for a lot of people. And Sophia, I can see you wanting to disagree, and there is a time.
No, I'm not going to disagree. Actually, we live in the dumbest timeline. All of our villains are like Fallout characters, where you're like, how did you get so silly?
Elon Musk is in some ways cartoonish or comic book supervillain like aspirations. However, in most cartoons or the few comic books I've read, the villains are like well written. And here's the thing: is that Elon Musk is like both so evil, but also so fucking dumb and boring and corny. He is doing like fucking 10-year-old memes while also dismantling the entire government.
Yeah.
It's pathetic. It's crazy. It shouldn't be, look, it's gonna be bad, but it shouldn't also be this like, oh, what a nerd. Like,
yeah, I know. It's really hard.
It's hard to respect the evil because it's like, oh, you're just such a fucking dork.
A sad dork.
But also terrifying. I want my evil rolling up with like a scar on their eye and like a suit, or it's like, oh, and like missing a hand, but like definitely has a laser.
You know what you never heard? What's the bad guy from Star Wars? My mind's falling apart right now.
Darth Vader.
You know what you never heard Darth Vader say? Well, actually.
Yeah, no, Darth Vader will just choke you. Like he doesn't have time for that shit. Yeah, no,
I want
we got
evil,
the
I want
dumbest
evil to have a little
villains.
swag to it.
Yeah.
I want well-seasoned evil.
We're
Maybe I
going
just want a black villain. I don't know.
Black Elon
Musk doesn't count, listeners. Even though he's technically African American.
Yeah.
The
He's
son
a
of a
DEI
cult.
hire of illegal. I can't believe I fucking said that.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he is technically, his parents lived in South Africa, but they were colonizers. So like, that's not really, okay. I actually don't think I want to follow down the path of being like, that's not really African.
I feel like if your family is, I don't know, Dutch or whatever the fuck people are that colonized South Africa, like, and you're like, oh, I'm African. Like, no, you're not African. You're European. Don't be silly. You live in Africa.
Yeah. Elon Musk is African the same way Elizabeth Warren is Native American.
We should start calling him Chappie. Since they all call her Pocahontas, let's start calling him Chappie.
God, it's perfect.
Like the robot movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That movie. That was a wild movie. That is a movie that I cannot take seriously.
Was that the one with Antwoord in it?
Yeah, it was. And what's his name? Wolverine guy.
Hugh Jackman?
Hugh Jackman's the villain in that. And it's, fucking Neil Blomkamp who directed fucking District 9. And he's like, what if I made District 9, which is a great movie, and then I made something weird to look at?
Yeah, he had one good idea. I don't think he's put out a bunch of movies. They all fucking suck besides District 9, as far as I remember.
I'm not gonna lie, if you make District 9 your movie, I am not a director or a movie person, I just am a viewer. I feel like you can kind of hold on to that one forever. It's kind of like getting a Grammy or winning a Super Bowl. Everything else you put out can be shit, but you still gotta respect that one.
Yeah. You still did the good one.
Yeah, I mean, just look at fucking M. Night Shyamalan. Like, we did a Shyamalan Timber bonus series on my other podcast on The Worst Week Yet, where we just watched a bunch of M. Night Shyamalan movies, and like, he had at least 2 great movies.
Yes.
And one pretty good one. And then like the rest of them were just insane. Leading up to his most recent movie, Trap. Have either of you seen Trap?
I didn't like Trap. I think
Trap was atrocious. And also like just the fact that you thought that movie was going to take place at a concert and they leave less than halfway through it. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Actually, the climate change arc is all leading up to us just talking about the movie The Happening. It's real, y'all.
But yes, but no, but maybe. Back to the story. So now we're in the 1970s, the decade where Nixon resigned after the Watergate scandal was discovered. The Beatles broke up. Augusto Pinochet overthrew a democratically elected government in Chile with the help of some arch bastards from the U.S. Star Wars came out. Muhammad Ali beats up a guy who literally gave all of his sons his name, plus one of his daughters.
Is his daughter Georgia Foreman, or is it still just George?
It's Georgette. It's worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
not that makes it good, but it's not as bad as I was like,
he's
wait,
got like
is it
6
that
sons named George. We're not going to spend long in the 1970s. We won't spend any more time on Georgia Foreman because really the actual information about climate change hadn't propagated too widely yet. The dangers weren't super well understood by your average person, and the reporting on it wasn't as common as you'd probably imagine when you think of the rise of environmentalist movements. The one thing that feels truly notable is that by the late 70s, one oil company was doing a lot of research on the impacts of CO2 in the atmosphere. And I'll be pulling from an article, Inside Climate Climate News. And the first quote from there is kind of a wild read considering where we are. The quote follows.
Should I be doing any accent work for this?
Have fun with it.
Oh, in written response, I'm not going to. You know what? This is serious. There's no time for fun. Quote, in written responses to question about the history of its research, ExxonMobil spokesman Richard D. Keel said that, quote, within a quote, from the time that climate change first emerged as a topic for scientific study and analysis in the late 1970s, ExxonMobil has committed itself to scientific, fact-based analysis of this important issue. End of the quote within the quote. Start of a new quote within the quote. At all times, end of the quote within the quote, he said, quote within a quote, the opinions and conclusions of our scientists and researchers on this topic have been solidly within the mainstream of the consensus scientific opinion of the day, and our work has been guided by an overarching principle to follow where the science leads. The risk of climate change is real and warrants action, end quote within a quote, also end quote. It goes on to say, one manager at Exxon Research, Harold N. Weinberg, shared his grandiose thoughts. Did I say that word right? Grandiose?
Yeah. Grandiose, yeah.
Grandiose. Okay. I was like, that didn't feel right coming out my mouth hole. Harold Weinberg shared his grandiose thoughts about Exxon's potential role in climate research in a March 1978 internal company memorandum that read, quote, this may be the kind of opportunity that we are looking for to have Exxon technology, management, and leadership resources put into the context of a project aimed at benefiting mankind. End quote.
Exxon was actually really worried about this and wanted to potentially just benefit humanity. Kind of hard to swallow that.
Yeah. Why didn't they just put a car in space? That fixed a lot of things when Elon did it, right?
Yeah. That's where you put your cars. That's where the parking needs to go.
Traffic in space is so legit because, like, in space, nobody can hear you honk your horn.
I don't know why, but it enrages me, not because of the like dooming humanity and all that stuff. Y'all, I'm not a full doomer all the time, only during this podcast. It's the fact that these companies could have had the biggest we saved humanity. Fucking buy our products. Like, just thinking about it, y'all could have saved humanity and forever gone to like a government, been like, yo, remember that crisis we avoided? We got another one, brother.
Yeah,
like, I don't know. Like, am I being weird? Like,
no.
Like, am I thinking like what the fuck?
Yeah,
like,
no. Every time a big company has a chance to fix a crisis, they're like, okay, we did a lot, but we spent some millions and now we'd like to make more money because our shareholders are like, oh no, my pennies.
Yeah, like, I think we've talked about it before, or maybe we haven't. It is something that I have a stand-up bit about, but like, you look at these people like Elon, but also just like any of these like mega billionaires or whatever the fuck. What did they say? Like, you could end world hunger for like $6 billion or something. It's a lot of money, kind of, but even to some of them. But in the grand scheme of things, you would be remembered as the person from history that ended world hunger. None of this fucking technology you're putting your name on, no, that's not gonna fucking cement you in history.
Yeah.
The guy that made sure no child would ever starve again, period. That's how people talk about you 1,000 years from now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because like I have those fantasies of like if I ever became a billionaire, yeah, I'm just saving one random town in Michigan, like I'm just solving a lot of problems. Yeah.
No, I mean, seriously.
I couldn't remember the name of Flint, Michigan. So super sorry. But it's like, I don't know. You can still make lots of money and have done something good. Like a random billionaire could, like you say, like potentially help eradicate like homelessness.
I think that's like $20 billion or something to end homelessness, period.
And get
like,
the meanest toppy of their life for doing so for the next 100 years.
Like so many, if you ended world hunger, even if you were not like a very attractive person, pretty much everyone would give you head afterwards. Like just end world hunger. It's
not just, here's the thing is that I'm not saying that you're wrong necessarily, but like these people are not motivated by like things that technically any of us could get. They are motivated by their like legacy and shit like that. To be fair, they wouldn't be in this position if they even thought like, oh, I'm in a position to help the most people, I should do that right now. They wouldn't be the richest man alive if they thought like that. But they do care most of all about legacy. Elon Musk said like, I want to be buried on the coast coastline of Mars. The fuck does that even mean? There's like the coastline of a planet? What are you talking about?
Also, like the coastline of a planet with no oceans. Mars is just a big fucking rust ball. There's nothing good up there.
The way you just said ball reminded me how close Connecticut is to Long Island.
Yes. Actually, if you use any of the dating apps in Connecticut and you live on the coastline where I live, Long Island will turn up results if you have a radius wider than like 10 miles.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because yeah, Long Island Sound, like we're literally right across from them.
Hell yeah.
I'm so upset that these fucking, I don't know. I just want more swag with my megalomaniacs. Like, bruh, do you know how much of a flex it is? If I walk in, like, say, metaphorically, win $20 billion in the universe lottery, and I'm like, cool, and world hunger, I walk in, it's like, oh, why are you here? I'm the nigga who ended world hunger. Bitch, why are you talking to me? You see them crackers? You see that non-government cheese? That's me!
It's just like an inarguable piece of evidence that the free market actually is not a good way to handle things, because ExxonMobil knew 50 years ago that there was a major problem coming. They identified it before anybody else did, to the extent that it would affect everything. They had the opportunity and the means to literally change the trajectory of the world for the better, and they chose not to because it would not be as profitable. It still would have been profitable. They still could have made so much money by leading the entire planet on the correct path. Undeniably, they honestly probably would have been more wealthy had they been doing this for 50 years. Just the 10-year plan, it wouldn't have been as profitable. And so they chose to keep the profits flowing in as they are, rather than do something that'll be a little hard for a little bit, but will end up being better for the entire planet. The free market is a fucking lie.
So in 1979, Exxon dropped a cool million, or about 4.3 million in today's dollars, on building a tanker with custom instrumentation to go study the amounts of carbon dioxide in both the air and the ocean. They also hired a lot of mathematicians and scientists to do some computational modeling on the topic and determine what the effects were, and it was pretty damn good for the era. As we talked about in the last two episodes, Exxon wanted to put a big question to rest. How quickly can the ocean uptake carbon dioxide? And by 1982, they were able to publish an internal memo, which even made it through the management levels of the company. As a scientist or engineer or applied mathematician, or whatever the hell I am at this point, and having worked at large companies, I need to tell you that bad scientific news rarely makes it to management. They don't want to know, usually can't understand it, and often don't really care, even if the impacts are an absolute disaster. Unless someone sues, that is. But, we won't get there for a while in this story. And that memo is available now from Inside Climate News in its original form, and we'll read from it now.
Atmospheric monitoring programs show the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased about 8% over the last 25 years, and now stands at 340 parts per milligram.
Parts per million.
This observed increase is believed to be the continuation of a trend which began in the middle of the last century. With the start of the Industrial Revolution, fossil fuel combustion and the clearing of virgin forests are believed to be the primary anthropogenic contributors, although the relative contribution of each is uncertain. The carbon dioxide content of the atmosphere is of concern since it can affect global climate. Carbon dioxide and other trace gases contained in the atmosphere, such as water vapor, ozone, methane, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, etc., absorb parts of the infrared rays radiated by the Earth. This increase in absorbed energy warms the atmosphere, indicating warming at the Earth's surface. The phenomenon is referred to as the greenhouse effect.
Now we need to put this in context from a 2023 LA Times article.
In 1999, the year Exxon and Mobil merged, company chief executive Lee Raymond, however, said future climate, quote, projections are based on completely unproven climate models, or more often, sheer speculation, end quote. In 2015, Raymond's successor, Rex Tillerson, who later served as Secretary of State under President Trump, also questioned climate projections involving the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Would you look at that? Rexy boy, sexy Rexy Rex Grossman Day. He said, quote, we do not really know what the climate effects of 600 parts per million versus 450 parts per million will be because the models simply are not that good, end quote. However, Exxon's own modeling from 1982 suggested that 600 parts per million of carbon dioxide would lead to 2.3 degrees or 1.3 degrees Celsius more global warming than 450 parts per million.
Yeah. Also, just as a note for everyone listening, all of that stuff about sexy Rexy, that is in the LA Times article. Like he's quoting that directly.
Yeah, I don't know why they were referencing Empire Records in this fucking 2023 LA Times article. It's
a classic.
It's fucking it is a classic. It's a banger, dude. It's a banger. Everybody, turn this podcast off. Go watch Empire Records.
So to be very clear, Exxon's modeling was extremely accurate. I need to hammer home that a lot of the work that I've done in my professional life has been in computational modeling of various kinds of systems, and climate is not an easy one. The more variables you have in a system, the harder it is to model. You have to figure out what kind of things do and don't matter, what the rules of the game are. And with complex systems, it can take years of statistical analysis or analysis by some other methods to figure that problem out. But I need my co-host to describe what they see here. I'm showing them an image of the results of Exxon's models, some produced by themselves and some rerun years later by third-party researchers.
I hate the fact that my brain immediately said some novice stat student faked this graph, because this is probably one of the most accurate fucking graphs I've ever seen in my life.
It looks like somebody faked the data. It's so good.
Audience, I don't have nearly as much background in stats as Sophia does, but this chart looks like someone took a black line, which is Exxon's guess, and just put a red line superimposed perfectly with like maybe a pixel or two of white space in between. If the data matches the output almost exactly, it's one of those things where that's usually a red flag in practice. So to see like these types of results, almost a direct 1-for-1, shout out to those scientists, mathematicians, and everybody, and you're never going to get better than this.
Yeah.
I would like to describe this graph. And again, we're looking at a graph, much easier if you could just see the visual, but this is an audio format. So I'll do my best here. This graph, if you want to see, it's going, the x-axis is years. So it's going from 1900 to 2100. The y-axis is temperature change. So it goes from 0 up to 3 degrees. The shape of the line on this graph, I will describe this to you as, how your grandparents said that they had to walk to school uphill both ways? This is kind of like that. It's just going up. It's going up. It's going up aggressively.
Yeah.
Now you can see the image in your mind. Rotate it.
You guys will see the image on our beehiiv page. We'll, again, have that in the show notes. If you look at the show on Spotify or whatever, there should be links and you'll be able to click on them and it'll bring you to the beehiiv page or our Patreon page where you can also click on the beehiiv page and, go from one to the other. Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because the more faint of the graphs are actually their earliest models. And so their earliest model predicted by now our temperature change would have been far worse, like 2.5 degrees almost.
We'll get there.
We're working on it. We just got to burn some more stuff. God. All right. Going back to the Inside Climate News article, there's a section in statements by Roger Cohen, who was the head of theoretical sciences at Exxon Corporate Research Labs at the time that all of this was happening.
Cohen wrote in September 1982, over the past several years, a clear scientific consensus has emerged, reporting on Exxon's own analysis of climate models. It was that a doubling of the carbon dioxide blanket in the atmosphere would produce an average global warming of 3 degrees Celsius plus or minus 1.5 degrees Celsius, equal to 5 degrees Fahrenheit plus or minus 1.7 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a unanimous agreement in the scientific community that temperature increase of this magnitude would bring about significant changes in the Earth's climate, he wrote, including rainfall distribution and alterations in the biosphere. He warned the public of the company's conclusions might attract media attention because of the connection between Exxon's major business and the role of fossil fuel combustion in contributing to increasing of atmospheric CO2. Nevertheless, he recommended publication.
Do we need a biosphere? I've never used one.
Who needs it? I love Biodome, though, but let's not talk about Paul A. Shore right now. And they did publish it.
We won't talk about him, but I am thinking about him always.
Me too. Always. God bless you, Paul. So they did publish it. They put out a number of peer-reviewed papers in the Journal of Atmospheric Sciences to share the results. You can still find these papers. They're fairly easily available. Some of them, you may need a subscription for, but that's not that hard to come by. The predictions were pretty damn good, as we said before, and the science is sound. While Cohen and other notable jerks have recanted what they said back then, the evidence is inarguable. You can literally just look at the models and check for accuracy. If you're bored, you can even put them in an Excel sheet and just check them. You don't have to. Plenty of other people have, but the information is publicly available for you to do so. And yes,
we did our own research.
And usually models that deal with complex and chaotic systems don't do well over a few years. So the models being as accurate as they are is pretty impressive. That being said, people spent years working on them, and many other people have spent years refining them, improving them, and trying to make good decisions based on the information they got from them. And there's another article from the Journal of Environmental Research Letters. The journal is called Environmental Research Letters from 2017 from Jeffrey Supran and Naomi Oreskes. I don't know how to pronounce that, and I'm very sorry to Naomi O, who wrote the paper with Jeffrey Supran from the Harvard Department of History of Science, which dives into the data extremely well. A chart from that article will be in our notes, but again, I'm going to ask my co-hosts to describe what they're seeing here. It's a chart of Exxon's communications, both internal and external, dated from 1971 to 2014, about anthropogenic climate change. That means human-caused. It compares internal communication, peer-reviewed articles, non-peer-reviewed articles, and advertorials, which are basically ads, but they're developed to look like rigorous scientific information.
All right. In describing this chart, there's a lot going. I'm actually going to have a much harder time describing. I can't tell you what I'm looking at. This is a busy fucking chart. I see some blue earlier, and no, never mind. I see some blue and some red, and I don't know. Sophia, this is not an easy chart to describe verbally.
So basically, there are 4 columns on the chart: internal, peer-reviewed, non-peer-reviewed, and advertorials. And you'll be able to look at this chart on the beehiiv page as well. That'll be up there by the time you're listening to this episode. And so if you're listening to it in the car, just go look at it when you get home or drive while looking at your phone. What the hell do I care?
Oh my God.
And so at first, we go through the years 1971 to 1977, and between advertorials and internal articles, they're not really writing anything on climate change. 1978, they acknowledge that climate change is a thing, but noteworthy putting this in any advertorials. And in 1989 and 1992, they do put it in advertorials, and they're also still publishing research on it and internal memos. And then for some reason, by 1966, they're externally facing either non-peer-reviewed articles or advertorials are doubting or denying climate change. That pattern kind of continues to evolve over the years, but occasionally, like in 2008 and 2009, up until through most of the Obama administration, all of their internal and external comms are acknowledging that climate change is a thing, and that's sort of a fucked up thing to do if you're a company like that. But
I guess I can just sum up this chart. They were lying to us.
Yeah. The chart basically says that internally they were like, oh, climate change is a big problem. And externally they're like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not a fucking problem.
Well, yeah, big company lied to us. I don't believe you.
They eased up on that during the Obama administration, and I think that's probably for regulatory reasons, but tough to say. But I thought it was interesting that they were acknowledging it internally and denying it externally.
Yeah, well, the goal is to make as much money as possible. So the thing I was saying earlier, where they in the 70s been able to take the lead on this kind of thing and position themselves to maybe not make very much money in the near term, but in the long term be like the global leader in the future technology. What they're trying to do is actually, it appears, have their cake and eat it too by probably internally working on how do we become the energy supplier of the next generation while also continuing to sell oil until somebody fucking stops us.
Yep, that is pretty much it. In a 1985 internal memo addressed to the lab directors and program managers, a proposed solution to atmospheric CO2 and SO2 concentrations increasing is discussed: subsea sparging. This is a process where the gas would literally be bubbled into the sea to dump off some of the carbon dioxide. They cite some reasons for not doing so, namely that it, according to them, offers little advantage over direct atmospheric release, where they mention that retention in the sea of carbon dioxide is only about a decade. Sparging air through soil is often used as a way to clear out volatile organic compounds that are contaminating it. However, they mention something in this memo that doesn't get discussed enough as a major consequence of added CO2 concentration in the atmosphere: the acidification of the ocean. According to the NOAA, in the last 200 years, we've seen a roughly 30% increase of the acidity of the ocean. While pH units are kind of odd to get used to, and people trying to sow disinformation will present this increase as only 0.1 pH units, it's really important to note that the pH scale is logarithmic, which means it goes up by powers of 10. People being unable to understand scale on a logarithmic chart was an issue I noticed during the initial spread of COVID, where sometimes charts with logarithmic axes were shown to condense data down, especially in situations where there's an exponential growth, but it also has the effect of not showing just how fast or drastically a system is evolving. In the show notes, I put a great 2020 article from Mother Jones about the comparison between traditional charts, which use your standard set of axes, and logarithmic axes for COVID data. If you're having a hard time picturing this, I deeply recommend the article, but let me try to give you a comparison. I need you to all know that for this example, I looked up the gestation time and litter size of eastern cottontail rabbits, and I don't know why I really felt the need to dive that seriously into this, but
imagine you've got 6 eastern cottontail rabbits in an uncontrolled environment with unlimited food, space, and all that split into breeding pairs. So after the first month, 3 of them have litters of 4 each. Now you have 18 rabbits. The babies can't breed yet, but they reach sexual maturity by 2 to 3 months. So in the next cycle, the breeding pairs switch. You get another 12 rabbits. We're up to 30 now, and by the beginning of the 3rd month, in the next month, you have the original 6 plus the first litters now available to reproduce, with 18 rabbits pairing off into 9 pairs. If you keep having the same amount of babies, roughly, with each available rabbit joining a breeding pair, you've got 66 rabbits by the end of the 3rd month. If you keep this pattern going, by the end of the year, you'll have over 32,000 rabbits.
That's exponential growth. So when we're talking about pH being in a logarithmic scale, what we're saying is that the acidity is raising exponentially. Small numbers translate to extremely large ones.
I just remember,
yeah,
that was always a meme of like, I'll never use algebra at all. Like, show me something like taxes. And now it's like, hey, algebra, kind of critical for understanding information.
Also, like, if you want to understand your bank accounts, you should probably know about exponential growth.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, human beings, our brains are not designed to understand numbers that work like this. Like, with practice, we can, but like, this kind of shit, it's accurate, but it just washes over people. This is not something that you could point out to most people and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's bad. They'd be like, yeah, I mean, it's 1%. Like, who cares? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Fair. It's
a number that... Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead after you.
I was just going to say that, like, this is the kind of thing that human technology evolved so much faster than human brains that I think we actually just might be doomed no matter what. Yeah, I don't see any way that you convince enough people to be like, all right, we're going to have to like take a few steps back and suffer a little to get a handle on this. It's just, you're never going to win. So like, I don't know. Sometimes I hear stuff like this or I learn stuff like this and I'm like, yeah, there's no hope.
I think there's plenty of hope, and we will talk around May this year about all of the good stuff, the ways out of these situations. But for now, we're going to talk about how the fuck we got here.
By May, we will have 258 rabbits. I can't wait.
Yeah, I am so excited for my 258 rabbits.
That will actually make me feel better. You know what? I would feel a lot less hopeless if I had 250 some odd rabbits right now.
Nice.
I'd be like, the world is a good place.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an article from the EPA, and I'll put the link in the show notes, but there's a real chance that you'll have to put the link into the Internet Archive at some point in the near future to actually check this website out. I'm also pulling information from the Smithsonian Institute for this. The EPA mentions that a number of animals use a chemical that we talked about previously, calcium carbonate, to build their shells and skeletons. This includes clams, oysters, scallops, mussels, corals, and starfish, but definitely doesn't end there. The big issue with excess carbon dioxide here is that it reacts with the seawater to create carbonic acid. The carbonic acid then reacts with the free carbonate ions floating in the water, which then become bicarbonate ions. While bicarbonate has its uses, the animals trying to make calcium carbonate can't use it for their skeletons or shells. These skeletons and shells will also dissolve more rapidly in the presence of more acidic water, meaning more energy and materials required to maintain what calcium carbonate they already have, as well as for making more. And if you like your raw oysters and don't want to say fuck off and die to Nemo and all the other little clownfish that live in the coral reef, this is a big problem. And as much as the scientists and engineers at these companies very clearly did understand the issues at hand, they really felt the need to cover it up. In 1989, they formed a group under the National Association of Manufacturers, a lobbying group for basically every manufacturing industry, to do so. The group they founded was called the Global Climate Coalition, which sounds like a group of people dedicating to solving the crisis of climate change, and yet here we are with a bunch of people really giving some good inspiration for the villains of the series Captain Planet, which debuted over a year later in September of 1990. The members of this coalition include representatives of the following organizations:
General Motors, Amoco, Chrysler, Texaco, DuPont, Eastman Kodak, Ford, IBM, Maytag, the National Coal Association, the National Steel Corporation, the American Gas Association, the American Iron and Steel Institute, the American Paper Institute, the American Petroleum Institute, the Motor Vehicle Manufacturers Association, the Occidental Chemical Corporation, Shell Oil, the Society of the Plastics Industry, I've seen Mean Girls, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and Dow Chemical, who, along with their subsidiaries and acquired companies, is responsible for some of the most egregious behavior in history, with the production of Agent Orange and the Beaufort disaster, which killed over 2,000 people immediately and an estimated 15,000 or more over the duration of its long-term consequences.
Yeah, I feel like the GCC is just a Voltron made up of the world's shittiest people and wound up being eventually run by the PR firm Reuter Finn, which is a whole other rabbit hole to go down, and I did go down it by accident, but their first client was Perry Como. After that, things went downhill a bit, and they went on to represent Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman. If you're familiar with the story of Jamal Khashoggi, his name might be familiar. Tobacco giant Philip Morris, multiple sides of the Yugoslav wars, and the elected government of the Maldives immediately after a coup overthrowing a democratically elected leader. It feels weird mentioning Perry Como in this because I tried finding someone who had anything to say about him other than he played kind of stupid poppy music for his era, and he dressed casual in an era where that wasn't really accepted yet, but he gave us Magic Moments, which is a great song. It sounds like it fits in a commercial for ED medication and is in movies like Dogma, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and more. And that's where we'll end this episode.
Is Perry Como, is that when Alex Jones was on trial? He was like, I'm not going to give you your Perry Como moment. Or was he talking?
Perry Mason.
No.
Mason moment.
Yeah.
Perry Mason's an old detective show.
I'm glad Jens knew what the fuck I was talking about.
I listened to more of the Alex Jones trial than I really thought I ever would. And it's a beautiful feeling of Schadenfreude. Watching him get dragged legally.
Here's the thing. I feel the same way about the Alex Jones trial as I do about the nomination hearings that we are currently watching. And by the time this episode's out, all these people will have been confirmed. But like, point is that pulling somebody out, putting their actual words and actions on trial, shining light on it for all the world to see how truly vile of a person they already are, and then them just continuing to get away with it is really fucking depressing. Alex Jones, at least at the time of this recording, they found him liable for $1 billion, and that motherfucker has been to Hawaii 3 times since then. There's no justice. There's
he's just moving around cash. It sucks.
He goes on his show and literally talks about his shell companies blatantly, openly, and there's no mechanism to stop it. RFK Jr., again, I'm positive he will be the Health and Human Services Secretary by the time you're hearing this. He has not been confirmed yet, but like, he goes up there, he blatantly fucking lies. They all know he's lying. Fun fact, nobody's ever like, dude, you're a fucking liar, which I don't know, I'd probably get kicked out of the Senate, but if I was in the Senate, I would go down swinging with that punch of just calling a spade, which I don't understand why nobody ever fucking does. But yeah, there's no justice for these people, and the way our system is built is that if you have enough money, you don't have to be fucking accountable to anybody. So yeah, great system. Great way to the free market, folks.
Yeah, gotta love it. You guys have anything to plug before we go to our other stuff?
Check out The Worst Week Yet. This is my other podcast. It's sad.
Nah, I'm nothing plugged. No pluggables.
No pluggables. Got it. Yeah, I recommend that if you're listening to this, you go plug your butt. And that's it for us on the Crumbling for this episode. And we'll talk to you guys. That feels weird to say. We will record an episode for you in 2 weeks that you will hear in 4 weeks.
Hell yeah.